People like you don't belong at an event like this. Madison Whitmore's words carried farther than she intended, or perhaps exactly as far as she intended. Beneath the crystal chandeliers of the Harrison Grand Hotel, conversations faded one by one. Champagne glasses hovered near painted lips. A violinist near the marble staircase lowered her bow. Nearly 200 of Boston's wealthiest guests turned toward the young woman standing alone beside the ballroom doors. Emily Carter didn't move. At 25, she looked almost painfully ordinary among women wrapped in couture and men wearing watches worth more than most houses. Her navy blue dress was elegant but simple. No diamonds. No designer clutch. Only a small silver bracelet rested around her wrist, its surface softened by years of wear. Madison lifted one manicured finger toward the exit. "If you leave quietly," she said, smiling, "we can spare everyone further embarrassment." A few guests exchanged amused looks. Emily's eyes remained steady. What Madison didn't know was that the humiliation she had carefully created was seconds away from becoming the moment she would remember for the rest of her life. Because the most powerful man in the building had just entered the room. And when he saw Emily, he stopped cold. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change." Now, back to Emily Carter. 3 hours earlier, the Harrison Grand had looked almost magical beneath the November sky. Black sedans and polished limousines glided beneath its golden entrance canopy. Camera flashes reflected against towering glass doors while photographers called the names of philanthropists, executives, and socialites arriving for the annual Children's Hope Gala. Emily arrived in a taxi. She paid the driver, thanked him, and stepped onto the sidewalk alone. For a moment, she simply looked up. Warm light spilled from arched windows 12 stories above her. Through the glass, she could see chandeliers glowing like suspended stars. Emily smoothed the front of her navy dress. Then her fingers touched the old silver bracelet. Her expression softened. "Okay, Mom," she whispered. "Let's do this." Inside, marble floors echoed beneath expensive shoes. Waiters moved through the lobby carrying champagne on silver trays. Everywhere Emily looked, wealth announced itself without needing introduction. She seemed invisible beside it. And she appeared perfectly comfortable that way. While other guests gathered beneath the photography backdrop, Emily quietly entered the ballroom and stopped beside a display of photographs showing children supported by the evening's charity. Her attention settled on one photograph. A little girl with bright blue eyes smiled from a hospital bed. Lucy Bennett, age 8. Emily stared longer than anyone noticed. "Still wearing the purple glasses," she murmured. She smiled. What Emily failed to notice was the woman watching her from across the ballroom. Madison Whitmore stood surrounded by donors, one hand wrapped around a champagne flute. Her ivory designer gown shimmered beneath the chandeliers. Her gaze traveled slowly over Emily's plain dress, inexpensive shoes, and solitary posture. Then Madison's mouth curved into a faint smile. She had already decided what kind of woman Emily Carter was. And before the night was over, that judgment would cost her something money could never buy back. Madison Whitmore had spent years learning how to measure people before they ever opened their mouths. Shoes. Jewelry. Posture. Who greeted them? More importantly, who didn't? And everything about Emily Carter told Madison the same story. She didn't belong. Emily was still studying Lucy Bennett's photograph when a waiter approached with champagne. She declined with a quiet smile and asked for sparkling water instead. Madison noticed that too. "How interesting," she murmured. Beside her, Vanessa Cole followed her gaze. "Who is she?" That's exactly what I intend to find out. Madison crossed the ballroom with the effortless confidence of someone accustomed to having space made for her. Vanessa and two other guests followed, curious enough to turn a simple introduction into an audience. Emily heard the approaching heels and turned. Madison offered a polished smile. I don't believe we've met. Emily Carter. Madison Whitmore. Emily nodded pleasantly. Nice to meet you. Madison waited. No recognition. That irritated her more than it should have. Most people knew the Whitmore name. Madison's family had donated to museums, hospitals, and political campaigns for decades. At events like this, introductions usually came with admiration. Emily simply turned back toward the photographs. Madison's smile tightened. Which table are you with? Emily glanced at her. I'm sorry. Your table. I haven't checked yet. Vanessa lifted an eyebrow. Madison looked briefly at Emily's dress. And who invited you? The question sounded harmless. It wasn't. Emily recognized the judgment beneath it immediately. She had heard that tone before, the polite voice people used when they wanted to make cruelty look like etiquette. I was told I'd be expected, Emily replied. By whom? Emily hesitated. That's a rather unusual question to ask someone you just met. One of the women behind Madison gave a small laugh. Madison's cheeks tightened. I'm only asking because this is a private gala. Tickets begin at $5,000. I know. The answer came without defensiveness. That somehow made Madison more suspicious. Across the room, an elderly waiter named Thomas paused while arranging glasses. He had worked at the Harrison Grand for 27 years and had seen wealthy guests behave badly before. Something about Emily's composure made him watch. Madison stepped closer. You came alone? Yes. No driver? A taxi. Vanessa failed to hide her smile. Madison gave Emily a sympathetic look that contained no sympathy at all. You understand why that might seem unusual here. Emily's eyes settled on her. Should it? For the first time, Madison's smile disappeared. Around them, conversations continued, but several nearby guests had begun listening. Madison glanced toward Emily's silver bracelet. Old. Scratched. Ordinary. Her conclusion hardened. Perhaps we should check where you're seated. That won't be necessary. Oh, I think it would clear things up. Madison raised a hand and signaled an event coordinator. Emily exhaled slowly. She could have ended the conversation with a single name. Instead, she looked once more at Lucy's photograph. Some lessons, she had learned, revealed themselves only when people believed no consequences were coming. The coordinator approached with a tablet. Madison smiled again. Would you check the guest list for Emily Carter? The woman typed. Then paused. She searched again. Her expression changed. I'm sorry, she said quietly. There's no Emily Carter listed. Madison turned toward Emily. This time, her smile was triumphant. And 3 nearby conversations stopped completely. For 3 long seconds, nobody said anything. Then Vanessa Cole laughed. It was soft, almost delicate, but in the sudden quiet around them, it carried farther than she expected. Madison Whitmore glanced at the event coordinator's tablet. Would you check again? I already did. Perhaps under a company name. The coordinator searched once more. Nothing. Madison slowly turned toward Emily. There it was, the confirmation she had been waiting for. I see. Emily remained still beside Lucy Bennett's photograph. There may be another list, she said calmly. Madison gave a short laugh. Another list? Yes. How convenient. More guests were watching now. A silver-haired businessman lowered his champagne glass. Two women near the auction display whispered to each other. Someone farther back raised a phone. Emily noticed. Madison noticed too. And instead of ending the misunderstanding quietly, she enjoyed the audience. This is precisely why private events have security, Madison announced. People hear that wealthy donors are gathering somewhere and suddenly everyone wants access. Emily's expression changed slightly. Not fear. Disappointment. I didn't come here to meet wealthy donors. Of course not. I came because I care about the children this evening is supposed to help. Madison folded her arms. Everyone can say that after getting caught. Thomas, the elderly waiter, stopped several feet away. His jaw tightened. He had seen embarrassment before. This was becoming cruelty. Ms. Whitmore, he said carefully, perhaps the event manager could resolve this privately. Madison turned. Thank you, Thomas. We have it handled. The dismissal was immediate. Thomas lowered his eyes, but he did not walk away. Emily looked at him. Thank you. Two simple words. Thomas nodded. Madison's irritation deepened. Do you have an invitation? No. A ticket? No. A confirmation email? Not with me. Vanessa exchanged a knowing look with the others. Madison stepped closer. Then explain something to me, Emily. You arrived without an invitation, without a ticket, without your name on the guest list, and apparently without knowing where you're seated. She paused deliberately. How exactly did you get inside? The accusation hung beneath the chandeliers. Emily's cheeks flushed. A security officer near the ballroom entrance began walking toward them. For the first time that evening, Emily looked genuinely hurt. Not because Madison doubted her. Because dozens of people were watching someone be humiliated, and almost none of them were willing to say it was wrong. Her gaze moved across their faces. Some looked entertained. Some uncomfortable. Some simply looked away. Emily lowered her eyes to the silver bracelet around her wrist. Her mother had worn it through hospital corridors, charity meetings, and years when helping one frightened family mattered more than impressing 100 wealthy strangers. Emily gently touched the worn metal. Then she looked up. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Madison smiled. Finally, something we agree on. The security officer arrived. Is there a problem? Madison answered before Emily could speak. This woman isn't on the guest list. The officer looked at Emily, then at the coordinator. The coordinator reluctantly nodded. Madison gestured toward the doors. I think she should be escorted out. A hush spread outward. Emily reached slowly into her handbag. For a moment, Madison's expression brightened, expecting some desperate proof. Instead, Emily removed her phone. The screen illuminated her face. One name appeared. Richard Harrison. Incoming call. Emily stared at it. Then, without answering, she pressed decline. Madison laughed. And in that moment, she had no idea she had just watched Emily refuse the easiest way to destroy her. Madison stared at Emily's darkened phone screen and shook her head. Was that supposed to impress us? Emily slipped the phone back into her handbag. No. Because pretending to know Richard Harrison at his own hotel is a rather dangerous game. I wasn't pretending. Vanessa laughed again. This time, several guests joined her. Emily heard every one of them. The security officer shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, if you can provide the name of whoever invited you, I can verify it. Emily looked toward the ballroom entrance. For a moment, she considered answering. One name would end this. Richard Harrison. The hotel owner whose private number had just appeared on her screen. But something stopped her. Perhaps it was Madison's satisfied expression. Perhaps it was the crowd that had watched cruelty become entertainment. Or perhaps Emily simply wanted to know how far people would go when they believed the person standing before them had no power at all. I don't want anyone disturbed, Emily said. Madison blinked. Disturbed? Yes. You're being escorted from a private gala, and you're worried about disturbing someone. Emily's eyes remained steady. Madison stepped closer, lowering her voice just enough to sound intimate while remaining perfectly audible. If you had any importance here, someone would know your name. The words landed harder than everything before them. Emily looked around. A dozen faces turned away. A young couple near the auction tables seemed embarrassed. Thomas still stood nearby, gripping his silver tray with both hands. Nobody spoke. Emily swallowed. Maybe being important isn't the same as being known. The room went quiet. Madison's smile faltered for half a second. Then she recovered. That sounds very poetic. Unfortunately, poetry doesn't get you into a $5,000 gala. She turned toward security. Please remove her. The officer hesitated. Ms. Whitmore, perhaps we should contact senior management first. I am one of this event's largest donors. And she hasn't caused any disturbance. Madison's face hardened. She is the disturbance. Emily's eyes dropped briefly. That sentence hurt. Not because she believed it. Because she remembered another woman standing in another expensive room years earlier, her mother, wearing that same scratched silver bracelet, being spoken to as though kindness without status meant nothing. Emily slowly straightened. All right, she said. The officer looked surprised. I'll leave. Thomas stepped forward. Miss Carter. Emily gave him a gentle smile. It's okay. She picked up her handbag. No argument. No threat. No mention of money. That disappointed Madison. She had expected pleading. Anger. Perhaps tears. Instead, Emily walked toward the ballroom doors with a dignity that made Madison's victory feel strangely hollow. The crowd parted. Each step of Emily's inexpensive heels clicked against the marble. Click. 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 Then the ballroom doors opened before she reached them. A cluster of hotel executives entered. At their center walked Richard Harrison. 72 years old. Silver-haired. Dark tuxedo. The man whose name appeared in gold above hotels across the country. Conversations shifted instantly. Madison's expression transformed. Oh, she whispered, smoothing her gown. She stepped forward, preparing her brightest smile. Mr. Harrison. Richard didn't appear to hear her. His eyes had already moved beyond the donors, beyond the executives, beyond Madison. They landed on Emily. He stopped mid-step. His face went pale. Then his gaze dropped to the old silver bracelet on her wrist. Something in his expression broke. Emily. The ballroom fell completely silent. And Madison's smile slowly disappeared. Richard Harrison stood motionless beneath the chandeliers. For a man known for commanding boardrooms with a glance, the sudden emotion on his face was impossible to miss. Emily, he repeated. Emily stopped near the doors. Hello, Richard. Madison's eyes widened. Not Mr. Harrison. Richard. The familiarity struck the room like a dropped glass. Richard started toward her. Madison quickly stepped into his path. "Mr. Harrison, I'm so glad you're here. We've had a small security issue." He barely looked at her. "What issue?" "This woman somehow entered without being registered. We were just handling it." Richard's steps slowed. His gaze moved from Madison to the security officer, then to Emily's handbag already resting against her shoulder. "You were leaving?" Emily gave a small nod. Richard's expression hardened. "Why? No need to make this bigger than it is." "Emily." There was something almost paternal in his voice. She looked at him. Richard glanced again at the silver bracelet. Memories seemed to pass behind his eyes. Then he noticed the circle of spectators. The phones. The uncomfortable faces. Thomas standing rigidly with his tray. Richard understood enough. "What happened?" Madison answered quickly. "Her name isn't on the guest list. She has no invitation, no ticket, and she couldn't identify who brought her." "Naturally, I thought." "You thought what?" Richard's voice was quiet. Madison froze. "I thought she might not belong here." Richard stared at her. The silence became unbearable. Then he turned to Emily. "I called you. I saw. Why didn't you answer?" Emily glanced toward Madison, then toward the guests who had laughed. "I didn't think I should need your name to be treated respectfully." Richard closed his eyes for a brief second. When he opened them, disappointment had replaced surprise. Not disappointment in Emily. In the room. Madison tried to recover. "Mr. Harrison, surely you understand. These events require standards. We can't allow just anyone to walk in." Richard looked at her. "Just anyone?" Madison swallowed. "I didn't mean." "No," Emily said softly. "Please." Richard turned back. She shook her head. "Don't humiliate her." The irony was so sharp that several guests lowered their eyes. Richard studied Emily for a moment. Then something unexpected happened. He stepped directly in front of her. The 72-year-old hotel magnate straightened his jacket. And bowed. Not a casual nod. Not the polished gesture of a host greeting a guest. Richard Harrison lowered his head deeply before the quiet young woman everyone had just watched being escorted out. A champagne glass slipped from someone's fingers. It struck the carpet without breaking. Nobody laughed now. Madison's face drained of color. Vanessa stared open-mouthed. Even the security officer stepped backward. Emily looked uncomfortable. "Richard, you don't have to do this." "Yes," he said, lifting his head. "I do." His voice trembled slightly. "I should have done it the moment you arrived." Madison struggled to speak. "Mr. Harrison, who is she?" Richard slowly turned. For the first time that evening, Madison looked afraid of the answer. Richard's eyes swept across the wealthy guests surrounding them. "You've spent this evening celebrating generosity," he said. His gaze returned to Emily. "Yet apparently none of you recognized it when it was standing right in front of you." A hush fell. Then Richard spoke the words that changed everything. "Emily Carter is the reason this gala exists." The words seemed to suspend themselves beneath the chandeliers. "Emily Carter is the reason this gala exists." Madison stared at Richard Harrison as if she had misheard him. Around her, the same guests who had whispered about Emily's dress now leaned forward in stunned silence. Richard turned toward the event coordinator. "Bring me the foundation file." "Of course, Mr. Harrison." She hurried away. Madison found her voice first. "I don't understand." "No," Richard said quietly. You don't. Emily touched his arm. Richard, this isn't necessary. It became necessary when they tried to throw you out of a gala you helped save. A murmur moved through the crowd. Richard faced them. 3 years ago, this program was weeks away from collapsing. 2 corporate sponsors withdrew. Medical grants were frozen. More than 80 families were about to lose assistance. Emily lowered her eyes. Richard continued. Then the Carter Hope Foundation stepped in. Vanessa's expression changed. She knew that name. Everyone in serious philanthropy did. The coordinator returned carrying a black folder. Richard opened it and removed several documents. $12 million, he said. Committed across 4 years. Someone gasped. Madison looked at Emily's inexpensive shoes again, as if they had somehow lied to her. But she's 25, Vanessa whispered. Emily heard her. So. Vanessa immediately looked away. Richard almost smiled. The foundation was started by Emily's mother. After her death, Emily assumed responsibility for it. Madison's lips parted. You run the Carter Hope Foundation? Emily nodded. I do. The room went silent again. Madison's mind raced backward through every sentence she had spoken. Who invited you? You don't belong here. People hear wealthy donors are gathering and suddenly everyone wants access. Each word returned sharper now. But her name wasn't on the list, Madison said weakly. Richard's expression cooled. Because Emily requested that it not be. He lifted one page. She declined the VIP table. Another page. She declined the press photographs. Another. She asked that her foundation's contribution not be announced from the stage. Madison said nothing. Emily finally spoke. The children don't need my name on a banner. That sentence struck harder than any boast could have. Thomas lowered his head, hiding a small smile. Richard looked toward the guests. Some people donate because they want a room to know what they gave. His eyes moved briefly toward Madison. Others give because they remember who needs it. Madison's face burned. Emily stepped closer to Richard. Please. Enough. But Richard shook his head. Not yet. Something in his voice changed. Emily recognized it immediately. Richard. He looked down at her bracelet. The scratched silver caught the chandelier light. I didn't bow because of $12 million. The room became utterly still. Madison looked confused. Richard's eyes glistened. That money is not why I owe you respect. Emily's composure finally cracked. Her fingers closed around the bracelet. Richard swallowed hard. 28 years ago, I wasn't the man whose name is on this hotel. He paused. I was a frightened father sitting outside a hospital room, wondering how I was going to save my daughter. Emily looked down. And the woman wearing that bracelet, Richard whispered, was the person who walked through the door. No one moved. No one even reached for champagne. Richard looked at Emily again. And what her mother did for my family is something no amount of money could ever repay. Richard Harrison's voice grew quieter. Her name was Margaret Carter. Emily closed her eyes for a moment. Hearing her mother's name spoken in that ballroom felt different. It belonged to hospital corridors, late-night kitchen conversations, and memories that still carried the warmth of her voice. Richard looked toward the crowd. My daughter, Claire, was 7 years old when she became seriously ill. I had a small hotel then. 1 building. Too much debt. No influence. No private jet. No people rushing across rooms to shake my hand. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. I was terrified. His gaze returned to the bracelet. Margaret found me sleeping in a hospital chair because I couldn't afford another night near the treatment center. Emily's fingers tightened around the silver. She helped arrange housing, transportation, meals. She sat with Claire when I had to work. And when I told her I would repay every dollar someday, she laughed. Richard smiled through wet eyes. She said, then repay it to someone who needs it more. The ballroom remained completely still. Madison's champagne flute slowly lowered. The man she had spent years admiring for his wealth was describing a time when someone might have judged him exactly as she had judged Emily. Claire recovered, Richard continued. My business survived. Then it grew. He looked around at the marble columns and glittering chandeliers. All of this came later. Emily swallowed. Mom never told me the whole story. That sounds like her. A soft, broken laugh escaped Richard. Then he looked toward the photograph display. And you became exactly like her. Emily shook her head. I'm trying. Richard pointed toward Lucy Bennett's photograph. That little girl you were looking at when you arrived, Lucy. Madison turned toward the display. Richard continued. Her family was denied funding for specialized treatment last year. Emily personally reviewed the case. Emily looked uncomfortable with the attention. Her mother needed help. You found a hospital. Covered transportation. Arranged housing for 6 months. Richard faced the guests. And never allowed your name to appear anywhere. The silence changed. It was no longer shock. It was shame. Several guests who had laughed earlier lowered their eyes. One man quietly slipped his phone back into his pocket. Madison stared at Emily. But why? She asked. Emily looked at her. There was no anger in her face. That somehow made Madison feel smaller. Why what? Why come here looking like? Madison stopped. Emily waited. Madison couldn't finish. Like someone who doesn't have $12 million. Emily asked gently. Madison's face reddened. Emily glanced around the ballroom. My mother taught me that generosity becomes dangerous when we use it to decide who deserves respect. No one moved. Richard nodded slowly. That is why I bowed. He stepped beside Emily. Not because she controls a foundation. Not because of $12 million. Not because she knows powerful people. His voice strengthened. I bowed because her family showed mine dignity when we had nothing worth taking. Madison's eyes filled with humiliation. Richard turned toward her. And tonight, in a room supposedly built around compassion, you did the opposite. Madison opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Richard's gaze moved toward security. Please escort Ms. Whitmore from the gala. A collective breath passed through the ballroom. Madison went pale. But before the security officer could move, Emily spoke. No. Richard turned. Emily stepped forward. Her eyes were steady. Please don't remove her. Madison stared at the woman she had tried to throw out only minutes earlier. And for the first time that evening, she had no idea what Emily Carter was going to do. Richard Harrison stared at Emily. After what she did to you. Emily glanced at Madison. Only minutes earlier, Madison had stood in the same place with absolute confidence, surrounded by people who reinforced every judgment she made. Now she seemed strangely alone. Yes, Emily said. After what she did. Madison swallowed. You don't have to protect me. I'm not protecting you. The words were quiet, but they carried across the ballroom. Emily stepped closer. If Richard throws you out now, everyone will applaud. You'll be embarrassed for an evening. Tomorrow, people will gossip about it. And eventually, this becomes another story about a rich woman who behaved badly at a party. Madison's eyes dropped. But if you stay, Emily continued, you have to remember why we're actually here. She turned toward the photographs lining the wall. Children in hospital rooms. Parents sleeping beside beds. Families smiling despite circumstances nobody in that ballroom would willingly choose. Emily stopped beside Lucy Bennett's photograph. This gala isn't supposed to be about who has the right dress, the right table, or the right last name. Her voice softened. It's supposed to be about people who need someone to see them before deciding what they're worth. A hush fell. Madison looked toward Lucy's photograph. For the first time that evening, she seemed to truly see it. Richard remained unconvinced. There still need to be consequences. I agree. Emily's answer surprised everyone. She turned toward Madison. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. Madison's face tightened. Emily continued. You didn't just embarrass me. You used your position as a donor to pressure staff. You treated Thomas like his judgment didn't matter. You asked security to remove someone because her clothes didn't fit your idea of wealth. Thomas looked up. Madison glanced toward him. The elderly waiter said nothing. He didn't need to. I'm sorry, Madison whispered. Emily held her gaze. Don't say it because you know who I am now. Madison froze. Ask yourself whether you would be sorry if Richard had never walked through those doors. That question landed harder than any punishment. Madison's eyes filled. She had no answer. Richard slowly nodded. Tomorrow morning, the hotel board will review what happened tonight. Your position on the Gala committee will be suspended during that review. Madison accepted the words without protest. And, Richard added, we're reviewing our event procedures. No donor will ever again have unofficial authority over hotel staff or security. Emily looked toward Thomas. Richard followed her gaze. Thomas? The waiter straightened. Yes, sir. I owe you an apology too. You tried to stop this. Thomas shook his head gently. I only did what anyone should have done. Richard looked around the ballroom. Apparently not anyone. Several guests lowered their eyes. Madison finally stepped toward Thomas. I dismissed you because I thought my money made my judgment more important than yours. Her voice trembled. I was wrong. Thomas studied her for a moment. Then nodded. Make sure you're still wrong tomorrow. A few guests almost smiled, but no one laughed. Emily returned to Lucy's photograph. Behind her, the ballroom slowly came alive again, quieter than before. Madison remained where she was. No security guards dragged her away. No public revenge came. She was simply left standing among the people whose approval she had valued most, forced to confront the person they had all just seen. And somehow, Emily's mercy had made that reckoning far more difficult to escape. By the time the orchestra began playing again, the Harrison Grand Ballroom looked exactly as it had before. The chandeliers still glittered. Champagne still moved across silver trays. Diamonds still caught the light. But something in the room had changed. People spoke more quietly now. Several guests approached Thomas by name. Others stopped at the photographs they had walked past earlier without looking. And Madison Whitmore stood alone. Eventually, she found Emily beside Lucy Bennett's photograph. Emily. Emily turned. Madison's confidence was gone. I owe you an apology. Emily said nothing. Madison swallowed. And you were right. I shouldn't apologize because Richard knows you. Her eyes drifted toward the old silver bracelet. If he had never walked into that room, I probably would have gone home believing I'd done the right thing. Emily's expression softened slightly. That's the part worth remembering. Madison nodded. I looked at your dress, your shoes, the fact that you arrived alone, and I decided those things told me who you were. No, Emily said gently. They told you what I was wearing. Madison lowered her eyes. Across the ballroom, Richard watched without interfering. For once, no one needed his authority. I'm sorry, Madison whispered. Emily studied her for a moment. Then make tomorrow different. Madison looked up. Emily gestured toward the photographs. Start there. No dramatic forgiveness followed. No embrace. Madison simply nodded and walked slowly toward the display. That was enough. Later that evening, Richard stepped onto the stage for the gala's closing remarks. Emily had already refused the seat beside him. She remained near the back of the ballroom beside Thomas. Richard looked across the crowd. We planned tonight around a number. $12 million appeared on the screen behind him. Several guests applauded. Richard raised one hand. The applause stopped. But tonight reminded me that generosity cannot be measured only by what appears on a check. His eyes found Emily. The easiest people to respect are those whose power we already recognize. The ballroom grew still. Character is revealed by how we treat someone when we believe they can do nothing for us. Madison closed her eyes briefly. Richard did not name her. He didn't need to. By midnight, the gala had raised more than expected. In the weeks that followed, the hotel introduced new event policies giving staff clear authority to challenge discriminatory treatment regardless of a guest's donor status. Madison stepped away from the gala committee during its review. Months later, she returned, not as its centerpiece, but as a volunteer working directly with families. Emily never asked for credit. And Lucy Bennett? Her treatment continued. The following spring, Emily received a photograph in the mail. Lucy stood outside her school wearing those same purple glasses, holding a handwritten sign. I'm back. Emily placed the photograph beside one of her mother. That night at the Harrison Grand was eventually forgotten by most of the people who attended. But Richard never forgot the young woman standing beneath his chandeliers while strangers decided her worth from a navy dress. And Madison never forgot the moment the hotel owner bowed to the woman she had tried to throw out. Because the richest person in that ballroom had never needed anyone to know she was rich. She had possessed something far harder to buy. When given the power to humiliate someone back, Emily Carter chose dignity. And that night, a room filled with people who knew the price of everything remembered the value of a human being.